Awesome. Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to our first SBP Lunch and Learn, at least the first for a while. I guess this is something that used to happen all the time. But we are excited to have the opportunity to go first as the Opportunity Housing Program. So today, Liz, Ashley, and I are going to walk you through a little bit about Opportunity Housing. Our goal today is just to provide some insight into the OH program, but also to equip y'all with some talking points to share with people when they ask you about opportunity housing, what it is, how it connects to SBP, and so on. Because this is hopefully a pretty easy and conversational program. We just want to invite you guys to put questions in the chat box throughout the program. And Kyle's going to man the chat box. And before we move on to the next topic, if there's questions that come up, one of the three of us will do our best to answer it and get as much information out to you guys as possible. So with that, we will get started. So the topics that we're going to cover today are going to be answering some of the questions that everybody learned to ask way back when. So why, what, where, when, and how. We're going to speak to opportunity housing as a whole first and just the general program. And then we will deep dive into some of the specific areas that opportunity housing is in. Okay. So the why. We can just go to the next slide really quick. So why did SBP start the Opportunity Housing Program? Well, SBP was able to help homeowners who needed repairs right after Katrina, but there was so many more people that still needed help. SBP was saying no to people that lost everything, people that needed a new home. SBP was saying no to renters. Also, SBP noticed that there was so much blight in New Orleans that even when they were helping homeowners get back into their homes, they were sometimes the only people on the block, the only residents on the block of the areas that they were helping. And local governments were reaching out to nonprofits, were reaching out to all sorts of organizations, asking for help, asking for how to handle all these blighted properties, what to do. And SBP, as usual, instead of looking at something that many could see as a problem, SBP looked at this and saw an opportunity. And they saw an opportunity to help more people and to build on the blighted properties. So in 2009, SBP received 10 blighted homes from St. Bernard Parish government, and we rehabbed them into affordable single-family homes. Not as easy as it sounds, but kind of just like that, the Opportunity Housing Program was born, and we've never looked back since. So the blighted homes and the need for homes has not gone away in New Orleans. In 2018, SBP's Opportunity Housing Program bought a number of lots in the lower 9th Ward to develop into single-family homes for sale. But at that time, we realized that there was no comps, that the real estate market in the lower 9th had basically gone flat. When there's, because there were very few sales in the lower 9th Ward, but we still took a chance. We developed those lots. We built houses. The thing about comps and having sales in the area that you're building houses is that with no comps or comparative sales in your area, it's really hard for a mortgage lender to predict what the value of your home is going to be at. So it builds a bit of uncertainty. It builds a bit of uncertainty for the developer on if they'll be able to sell their home, if it's going to be valued at what it is. Then it also builds uncertainty with the person applying for a loan, applying for a mortgage, if they will be able to get a mortgage. But we were really lucky and really fortunate that these homes that we decided to build and that we took a chance on in the lower 9th, that these lenders valued our homes at what they needed to be valued at. They were able to give a mortgage to these potential home buyers, and we basically created comps in the lower 9th. We created comparative sales for other developers to then use and to have some certainty of when they were able to build homes in the lower ninth. We basically restarted the real estate market in the lower ninth. And that's something that Liz and other people that were involved with that program in 2018 are so proud of, and something that is really awesome to be, I think, to be a part of, something that I am proud to work with, just making those comps and taking that risk and developing a real estate market in the lower ninth where a ton of homes have been built since then. The housing market in New Orleans is so odd. It's so off. The affordable housing market in New Orleans is still in desperate need. This need for affordable housing was highlighted by Katrina, but it started before Katrina and it continues well after Katrina. In 2016, there was a 10-year plan made for affordable housing in New Orleans. It was determined that the city needs to add 33,593 affordable units, rentals and for sale units, to the city in order to meet its goal of affordable housing and have sufficient affordable housing available. It's been years since 2016. There has been a lot of nonprofits working, a lot of government working towards this goal. And the thing is, the city has only added 1,277 units of affordable housing. So we need over 33,000. We've only added 1,277 units in years since this plan was made. I am excited and hopefully and motivated to be part of the next 4 years of this goal, and maybe we can make a larger dent. I know that Liz would love to make a huge dent in that number and move forward, and I know that we can, but that just goes to show that the need for affordable housing is so apparent in New Orleans and really across the country in all urban cities and just in general throughout the country. But that is why SBP started and why SBP is still alive and going in New Orleans. Liz, did you have anything to add to that part?
No, nothing to add. That's great. Thanks, Katie.
Awesome. Okay, Kyle. And then we want to just touch base real quick on why OH has continued and why opportunity housing is such a continued need in New Orleans and across the country. And a lot of it comes down to the fact that extreme weather conditions are increasing and extreme disaster events are just going to simply increase. As a lot of us on this call know, affordable housing, both rental and home ownership, is disproportionately affected by extreme weather, and it's just going to keep happening. I listened to the conversation between President Clinton, Zach, and Priscilla, the CEO of Enterprise Community Partners, and there's a lot of facts. First of all, I encourage everybody to listen to it. I have a link for it later. But Priscilla shared this staggering statistic that just hit me like a ton of bricks. And that's that 40% of affordable rental units throughout the country would not be able to withstand a major weather event. 40%. That's a lot of affordable units. She pointed out that a lot of our affordable units throughout the country are over 40 years old and simply extremely vulnerable. Y'all, 40% of units just could be gone with a major weather event. It is staggering to me. And that's just one basic example of how affordable housing in this country continues to be at risk day after day. Affordable housing is more impacted by natural disasters. And in relation to that, it takes longer for people in affordable housing, for vulnerable populations, to recover after a natural disaster. If I wasn't speaking to this group of amazing coworkers, I would take a lot longer to talk about this, but I think that we all have some background on this, and this is what SBP does, right? But just to take a little quick overview of it, of why this is so important. Affordable housing is usually located where land costs less, putting homes in floodplains, near toxic facilities, and in outlying areas with really low code enforcement. Also, affordable homes are usually older, and older homes or older affordable apartment complexes were built under less stringent building codes. That's huge. And also, simply put, historical segregation, ongoing discrimination compounds these problems astronomically. While our rebuild program is able to hit the disaster cycle early, they're able to help repair homes and get homeowners back into their homes, usually more resilient homes at that point, which is, it's amazing how early and quickly that's able to happen. But recovery is not complete until everybody can come home. And that's where opportunity housing comes in. Renters and homeowners that lost everything, especially those that need affordable rentals and affordable home ownership, often find it amazingly difficult to come home. That is due to a number of reasons, probably more that we could talk about for a really long time, but just to highlight some main reasons that make this really hard for people to come home in those two categories is that housing recovery is left to the open market after a disaster. After a disaster, housing supply is down, housing demand is up, and the price of housing after disaster becomes astronomically high. For those of us in New Orleans, we saw that in a very small, specific way after Ida, just because so many people were coming into New Orleans because we had some housing available. However, our affordable housing market was just inundated, and there was barely any rentals left after Ida for people trying to house people. And I know people in the SBP offices, we were just taking call after call of people looking for housing, and we simply weren't able to help because we were full too. But the price of housing after disaster going up is just a huge issue with renters and with people that need a new home in general. Another point that is really important, I think, especially in today's world of rising construction prices, is that in depressed markets, replacement values are not enough to rebuild equivalent housing. So when we saw a bunch of AmeriCorps deployed to Kentucky, let's say where like the tornadoes hit, because a number of those neighborhoods are in pretty depressed markets, some of the home values may average under $100,000. And it's simply impossible to build a replacement home for under $100,000 right now. And that puts a lot of people in a very vulnerable state. One of the last big things to mention about why it's so important for opportunity housing or a program like opportunity housing to enter into a market after a natural disaster is because in growing markets, so in markets that are just doing really well, like let's say Houston, affordable housing, rental or single family, is almost never replaced with more affordable housing. When a developer comes into a market that they see that's just booming, or a city that's just booming and growing, they're not going to replace affordable housing with affordable housing. They're going to put in fancy condos or fancy homes, which is something that we've seen, especially on the North Shore. I know that not a lot of people in New Orleans are familiar a lot with Mandeville or Covington, and some people that are listening from all over the country. But after Katrina, in this area, especially in Mandeville and Covington, basically the only new homes or apartments that we're building were definitely high income apartments and condos. There's been no affordable housing built for rentals in Mandeville basically since Katrina, because the market calls and can continue to take these high cost condos and apartments, which is devastating it's devastating for a market and for a workforce. Opportunity housing is such an important part of the disaster cycle. It may take a little bit longer to get the program running than advise and rebuild, but it's just as needed. Opportunity housing allows SBP and other organizations that have affordable housing to replace and provide new, resilient, affordable housing opportunities in a community. That allows community development. It allows a community to bring back a workforce to make their community relevant again. And a workforce helps their economy. And then all of a sudden, when a workforce is back and an economy is back, you get this thriving, resilient community again. And you need affordable housing in order to do that. And opportunity housing just supports that recovery and just really promotes resilience of a city. If you can tell, Liz and I and Ashley are pretty passionate about opportunity housing. But so that is our big why of opportunity housing. I know that there's a lot of more specific whys and possible questions as to why opportunity housing, but that is our big why. It's that disaster cycle. It's that need for opportunity housing and affordable housing to come back in to help the community grow again, to help that community development, and just to form that resilient community after a disaster. With that, we'll move on to the basics of generally what is opportunity housing. So there's a lot of specifics, but just in basic steps before we move on to some of the specifics of the areas that we're in, what we would love for you guys to take away for what is opportunity housing is that opportunity housing is a program that develops resilient, energy efficient, and affordable homes for sale and rent for low and moderate income households. Opportunity housing develops units in disaster impacted areas, and opportunity housing builds to standards that reduce risk in the face of future disasters and reduces energy usage and price fluctuations of utility costs. In New Orleans, how we do that is that we build to fortified gold standards and Energy Star standards. So those are the basic 3 things of opportunity housing. We build resilient, energy efficient homes for low and moderate income households. We develop units in disaster impacted areas, and we use those standards to really just build up resiliency in those organizations, in those neighborhoods, and in those communities. That is the basic, and that is kind of just those basic things that we hope really help get the information out about opportunity housing as a whole to a lot of our organization. That's a ton of information. So if anybody has questions just about the general opportunity housing program, we would love to hear them. Kyle, if there's any in the chat box or anything, just kind of like where we are on general opportunity housing questions. And then we'll kind of get to some of the fun stuff with the specifics for New Orleans and the specifics for Houston and the specifics of where we're going in the future. Do we have?
Will we share the slides after this presentation? I am sure we will.
Yes. Awesome. Okay, I was not looking at the chat box at all, guys. So we're good to go. Okay, so
we actually do. Sorry to interrupt. We do have a question. What is the structure required to execute? J.R. Sanderson asks.
The structure required to execute.
Is that to execute opportunity housing in a community, J.R.?
Yeah, I think so. I think this is a tremendously powerful initiative, and I think it's brilliant the way that you're doing it. But what does it take to really execute this? How many people? What's the cost to us internally in New Orleans? Because this is something that should be replicable, and I think you're going to talk about Houston and other places later. But just how many people does it take, and what are their job functions? What's the structure behind it? Would be my question.
I was going to say, Liz, do you want to take that one?
I'm happy to hop in here. And I would say it's evolved over time, JR. So it's a great question. When we started, the construction department in New Orleans oversaw the construction of all opportunity housing units. And at that time, it was just single family homes for sale. Some of them were rehab, some of them were new construction. As the program has evolved and we've brought in different kinds of funding and financing and built not only single family homes for sale, but also built like St. Peter, right? The 50 unit building that we have in New Orleans, or the scattered site duplexes in the lower 9th Ward. those programs had more complexity to them, and required us to bring on additional staff. So we started with a couple people doing this work kind of part-time and weaving it into our work. And now we've found that we've got to grow the team. So in New Orleans, we have Ashley, who's our resident services coordinator, who she'll talk a little bit more about her role, but she's working with all of our renters and helping anticipate problems, getting to know families really well, bringing them resources, and at the end of the day, really preventing people from having to move out or us having to kick them out, right? We want to be the kind of landlord that doesn't ever want to have to evict someone. And we do that by having Ashley there talking to people and help forecast problems. Katie is managing the for sale side right now in New Orleans, and also working with Robert in Houston to manage the for sale side. Keith and I are both serving some roles, whether it's on the financing side or helping attract funding or submit applications. And then JR, for now, the last team member that we have is Phil Perkins, and he's the newest member of the Opportunity Housing team. He starts on Monday, remotely from Africa, and then we'll be stationed in Houston, and we'll be there full time on the 28th of March, and comes to us with lots of experience in developing housing, marketing around that, doing a lot of sales. So we're really excited to bring him on. So it's kind of a long-winded answer. I apologize, but hopefully that starts to paint the picture of where we were and kind of where we are now in terms of staffing. Hey, Kyle, you're on mute.
Thank you. Okay, we have some other questions. Ian says, maybe this is covered later, but where are we seeing people go that are being priced out of their communities? Are they staying in the area or are they relocating?
That's a big question, Ian. I don't have an exact answer to that. I don't know if Liz has an exact answer to that, but I think a general answer is that a lot of people simply don't get to come back to their home after a disaster hits if pricing goes up. Or they live in substandard housing for a long time, which I think is what we've seen in New Orleans. A lot of people are simply living in places that people shouldn't be living, that are substandard, that are not safe to live in. Sorry, I don't have a more specific answer.
No, helpful. Nicole asked, what position is Phil filling? Phil is filling the executive director of Opportunity Housing. That's the correct term, correct? Yep.
It felt weird when I wrote it too. I was like, am I writing this right? Phil filling. Thank you.
And then Andy says, if you look at a risk vulnerability matrix after disasters, most of the nonprofit sectors prioritize homeowners versus renters, though renters are often the most overlooked segment. Typically, there are short-term programs for rental assistance, but little is done to solve the long-term rental needs. How are we thinking about ownership versus rental opportunities, and what challenges do we foresee in scaling rental units?
Andy, this is a tough question. I'm glad you asked it, and it's complex. So I'm going to take a first pass at it, but this might be one that we take offline and follow up with. So how are we thinking about, I'll start with the first one. How are we thinking about home ownership versus rental opportunities? You know, the owner occupied rebuilding program, as many of you know, really focuses on homeowners, because in a lot of ways, that's a much easier, it's weird to say this, but it's a much easier problem to solve than the rental units. Typically, funding for rental units comes in as part of the CDBG-DR funding. And then any allocation that state or jurisdiction might get from HUD on an annual basis. But usually the annual allocation is so small in comparison to what the need is. And as we all know, it takes a really long time for the CDBG-DR money to get to a community after disaster. And that's part of the problem. I think the other problem that I've seen is there are a lot of smaller landlords and property owners who are uninsured or underinsured, and they try to figure it out on their own for a while. And in the interim, there are a lot of people who are displaced, or as Katie said, living in substandard housing. And it's really hard to solve for that. I've seen some interesting programs in Louisiana where they tried to provide loans with low interest rates for smaller landlords. Many of those efforts, there was some success, but there are also a lot of challenges. A lot of landlords claiming that they couldn't take on additional debt, that it would just drive up the rental prices. And so, I don't know that we've figured out the perfect balance yet, Andy, but I would like to get us to a place where we can start thinking about developing rental units in certain disaster impacted markets sooner, and starting to understand what funding or financing mechanisms might be available in some markets, or that we can push some markets to gain access to, so that developers like SBP, whether they're for-profit, well, SBP is not for-profit, nonprofit or for-profit, are incentivized to come in and help solve the rental problem. Anyway, that was a lot, but hopefully that starts to address, I think, what was a really good question.
Does. Thank you, Liz. Just from my short experience hopping around disaster to disaster, that seems to be like, as groups convene, one of the topics where there's like no hands raised as far as folks offering assistance, besides maybe Red Cross with vouchers for 90 days or something. So it's always been perplexing to me that like there's not a good path forward, and we see this time and time again. So I'm optimistic that maybe there is like a way to leverage like RAF to also incentivize and use this for rentals and stuff like that. I think there's just a massive opportunity here to solve that problem, basically.
I love it, Andy. I love it. Look forward to having more conversations about that.
I just have a quick question. And I apologize if this was already discussed, but is there an opportunity with Opportunity Housing in the SHARE program? Because I think like this is just a really cool model that probably would be duplicated in other areas.
Hey, I'll hop in and take that one too. Thanks, April. I think there could be the SHARE partner or the nonprofit organization would need to have the infrastructure, to sort of JR's earlier question, to be able to launch a program. We would be so happy to share it with an NGO or community-based organization or local governments, and we have. You've been a part of some of those conversations. I think the challenge is just capacity for some of the groups.
Yeah.
But doesn't mean it's not doable.
Okay, if you guys don't mind, we're gonna move ahead to try to cover some stuff, and then we can jump at questions in a bit. These questions were amazing, though. I just wanted them to continue. I so appreciate the feedback and the questions. It's great that everybody's interacting. I appreciate the questions. Thank you very much. But with that, we're going to throw it to Ashley and Liz, and they are going to talk about some of the timeline of New Orleans history and what we have done in the past with OH. And then Ashley is going to talk to us about some of the amazing buildings and properties that we have in New Orleans.
Okay, hi everyone. We're going to talk about the what, when, and how, a little bit of a background history of SBP and its inception. So in 2009, as we know, we started in St. Bernard Parish. St. Bernard Parish government provided us with lots through the Road Home program that we were able to put up for sale to lower income families and house many of them. In 2011, SBP was able to rehab 12 of those properties and build 2 homes for sale for low-income households through the land that was provided to us by NORA, which is the New Orleans Redevelopment Authority. In 2014, those rehab properties are now what we called our owner-occupied, our Opportunity Housing home rental doubles that we rent to low-income families that are unable to pay market rent. In 2013, SBP began developing homes for sale in the lower 9th Ward with 5 of those lots that we obtained, and we were able to build homes again for low-income home buyers, with 2 which were sold to lease to purchase agreements. In 2013 and 15, SBP was awarded new market tax credits that were used to acquire the land for our New Orleans headquarter location here in Mid-City. And we were able to create an operating business which provides new ownership opportunities to lower income buyers. From 2016 to present, which we continue to do, SBP continued to build rentals and homes for sale using a blend of financing and funding opportunities to expand our resilient and energy efficient building techniques. Right now, we're currently focusing on single family and for sale homes and our LIHTC rental developments, which we will get into more detail on the next slide. So our LIHTC properties, which we're extremely proud of, our St. Peter property, which is where I'm located and where I work from, is our 50-unit apartment building. We're Louisiana's first net zero energy efficiency apartment building. We have 29 affordable units and 21 market units. Here at St. Peter, we're essentially located near Whole Foods, the Lafitte Greenway, and the VA hospital, and we're on a major bus line. Our tenants here at St. Peter are able to have an affordable house, an apartment, many of them who transition from homelessness. Let's see. I'm sorry, guys, I'm a little nervous, but I'm gonna work my way through. St. Peter is Louisiana's first net zero energy efficiency apartment building, and we're able to offer an affordable apartment with affordable utilities that is also very resilient. Our St. Peter building is equipped with solar panels and a battery backup system and very efficient appliances. During our recent storm for Hurricane Ida, our tenants here at St. Peter did not lose power when the rest of the city went dark. The St. Peter project is a new way to think of affordable housing, and we've been able to prove that it can be done, and we want the concept to be replicated by others across the country. Just recently, I was contacted and spoke to a young lady who is a student at Vassar College. She's working on a research project about what we do here at St. Peter with the solar panels. She's an undergraduate student. She's interested in how the microgrid successfully affects and helps our residents here at St. Peter. She's actively working on it. She and I have talked several times. We've shared some of our energy efficiency data. And when she's done with that project, she is going to share it with us. And I will share that with the team. It's a very interesting project and research that she's working on. But she talked about how our St. Peter property have paved the way and opened up possibilities for other properties throughout the country to want to replicate what we are doing here at St. Peter. So St. Peter is a project that we're extremely proud of, and we are open to the possibility of it being replicated by other developers across the country. Our other LIHTC property is our St. Claude Gardens property. We have 60 rental duplexes that is scattered throughout the lower 9th ward. There are 2 and 3 bedroom duplex units that are built using the fortified standard to withstand high winds and are Energy Star certified with energy efficient appliances. Those units serve households making up to 60% of the area median income. We are proud of the St. Claude Gardens property as well. During the Hurricane Ida, we had very little to no storm damage, and none of our properties needed to have a blue tarp. The lease that we had was maybe a slightly bent awning on the property, so that's definitely something to be proud of. Liz is gonna talk about our phase 2 of both projects and what's to the future of the Opportunity Housing Program.
Awesome. Thanks, Ashley. Appreciate it. So just to take a step back, so LIHTC stands for Low Income Housing Tax Credits, and they are very competitive credits, and I'm proud to say that we've received 2 awards, as Ashley highlighted here. We also have in our pipeline a couple of projects that we're waiting to hear if we get credits for. And those would be St. Peter Phase 2. So that would be like a slightly smaller version of the existing St. Peter on an adjacent lot. And we're really hopeful that we will get those tax credits from the state of Louisiana's Housing Finance Agency. We also have an application out to the LHC for credits to continue St. Claude Gardens. It would be an additional 39 units, also scattered throughout the lower Ninth Ward, aimed at that population, really for people who are working and can't afford regular rentals. So really targeting these units at people who are at or below 60% of the area median income. And then we have another really interesting project that we submitted for tax credits in Lake Charles. And we will be hearing about all of these applications in the next 30 days or so. So I will pause there, see if anyone has questions. Oh, no, I'm not allowed to ask for questions yet. I'm going to kick it back to Ashley. All right, Ashley.
All righty, so on our next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about our scattered site rentals. SBP owns 15 units that is scattered throughout the city of New Orleans. They are all affordable rental units. All of our tenants are below 60% of the area median income and may not be able to afford rentals if SBP did not exist and they were not living in one of our units. We're going to touch a little bit on the lady in the picture, her and her son. She's Miss Felicia. She has been our client for quite some time. A little bit of backstory on Miss Felicia and how she became our client. Miss Felicia previously lived in the unit across from the property where she lives now. Miss Felicia's home was filled with mold. Her son suffers with asthma, and the conditions of the property was causing him to have some really severe reactions. It was so bad at one point, Miss Felicia had to put her son's uniform in a plastic bag to prevent him from having to wear mold-infested clothes to school every day. When Miss Felicia moved into our SBP unit, she felt more comfortable and safe, and she has successfully been our tenant for the past few years. Miss Felicia right now, which Katie probably doesn't know this, but I've started working with Miss Felicia on the homeownership process, which is one of our goals for our rentals, for them to at some point transition to homeownership. So Miss Felicia just recently started that process, and she's extremely excited to see the end, to become a first-time home buyer.
I will unmute myself. Just to touch quickly on one of the last programs that we have going in New Orleans, which we already talked about a little bit, is our single family homes that we build and sell. SBP has built and sold almost 100 single family homes in New Orleans, which we are very proud of. Currently, we have 4 homes under construction, and we plan to finish 9 homes by the end of the year. That is done with a mixture of volunteers, AmeriCorps, Robert, NOLA, as I refer to him, because we have one in New Orleans and Houston, and some subcontractors and such like that, just a mix to get these 9 homes finished by the end of the year. All of our homes are built to standards like Energy Star 3.0 and Fortified Gold. We touch on this a lot, but we're just really proud of that fact. These homes are built to the energy efficient and storm resilience so that families can build equity and save money now on things like energy costs and be better prepared to move on in the future when disasters may come. To do this, SBP partners with local community organizations such as NORA, which Ashley touched on earlier. A lot of our single family homes in New Orleans, we do in partner with NORA, especially the NORA OHIP program. This program provides a buyer and a seller subsidy to help developers build quality homes while still selling them for the most affordable prices that they can. The first home that I sold at SBP, that I was involved from start to sell of with the home to when I was at SBP, was for this amazing young woman named Jasmine Scott. The moment that you meet Jasmine or interacted with Jasmine, you just instantly felt the determination that she has and the pride that she has to provide for herself and her future family. We were really, really lucky that Hope and others in the comms department were able to work through and like put together this amazing video. It is less than 2 minutes, but to be honest, guys, I think I'm going to take a quick skip on it. I'm going to encourage you guys to go back and watch it, but we just want to make sure that we stay within our lunch and learn time limit. And I know that you guys are going to have more questions at the end. So we're going to keep going, but when this is shared, y'all please go and watch this video of Jasmine. She just really talks about the importance of home ownership and what it means to her and her future family. Affordable housing is something near and dear to my heart and something that I've been working with since college. Affordable housing and allowing and working with families to get them into homes is a huge way to build generational wealth and to break the cycle that a lot of families are in. It also is an amazing way to lower the race wealth gap that we have right now in America that's large and should be lowered. And there's so many positives that come from getting a family into an affordable home ownership situation. And I am just very, very honored to be able to continue that work here with SBP. Sorry to keep that brief, but are there any questions based on like NOLA specific that we can answer real quick before moving to Houston?
Real quick, sorry to be that guy. Could we do a quick, like the easiest overview of like what a new market tax credit versus a low income housing tax credit, how those work from like a financing and development? I think that's such an interesting piece that most folks probably don't quite understand. And I think it's helpful to like frame how we do and approach all of these.
My quick answer would be low level brain damage or moderate to high level brain damage. But in short, new market tax credits provide less equity than low income housing tax credits. New market tax credits are really for commercial developments, which is why we got them and built SBP headquarters with them. You can use them for other purposes, and we did in New Orleans. We created about 25 single family homes for sale using those credits, but boy, was it complicated and complex. In contrast, low income housing tax credits are really for the development of affordable housing and affordable housing only. They provide a lot more equity than new markets do. And there's a cycle in most states and jurisdictions where you can apply for those for LIHTCs. And new markets, there isn't as much consistency or regularity in the application process. So I'll leave it at that, if that's okay, Andy. And then maybe we can send out a little write-up for anyone who wants to nerd out some more on tax credits. Does that sound good? Okay, awesome.
Andy, I would just have to say you're asking amazing questions, because I think a handout on that would be helpful for every single person on this phone call. Okay, with that, if we're good, we will move on to Houston. We're really excited about Houston. We just got to Houston. We have an amazing team in Houston, and yeah, we're moving forward in Houston. We can go to the next slide that just kind of shows the basics of what we got going right now. In Houston, we currently have 4 single family homes under construction, and we have plans to complete 7 of those 7 homes before the end of the year. So we have 4 under construction, and we will break ground on 3 more and hopefully finish them before the end of the year. I know that Robert Houston will say we will for sure finish those before the end of the year. And I enjoy your confidence on that, sir. That is the goal. All 7 of those homes are done in partnership with the Houston Land Bank. That was something else that I think is really important about our single family home builds or opportunity housing when we go into a community. Just those community links that we can make and those community partnerships that we can make is a big answer to the how we as SBP are able to make a difference with opportunity housing. It's partnering with these local organizations that maybe have the land or have at least like access to some of the blighted or vacant land that needs to be built on. In addition to that, we have two projects, 2 buildings that we're really excited about that we are referring to as the missing middle rental projects. And Liz has some more information on those. We're very excited to see them start to get underway.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Katie. So there are 2 7-unit buildings. One is in a very residential area and the other is in sort of a mixed commercial residential area. And I think the opportunity to live in a smaller building that feels more residential and less like a large apartment building is a great fit for some renters. There aren't a lot of those, however, that are available that are affordable and that are in good shape, candidly. And so SBP was able to secure a grant from the city of Houston to build these 2 7-unit buildings. SBP is responsible for 30% of the equity or cost, and the city, I think it's 30, might be a little bit lower than that. The city of Houston is covering the rest. And so on a project, we were just looking at the budget for one of them, where it's just shy of $2 million. That means the city is covering a really significant portion of the project. And it allows us as a nonprofit developer to create units, to commit to making them affordable for a long, long, long time. And as much as we can to put them in areas that are more desirable because they have more amenities, they have more transportation. The schools might be stronger than in other parts of town. So that's a quick overview of the missing middle rental projects, as we call them. They're going to go under construction within the next 30 to 60 days. So we're really excited that Phil will be on the ground as we get those started in Houston and Robert Houston as well. And we'll have some pictures to share really soon.
It's so exciting. I'm excited to see those go up. It's going to be awesome. Liz is also going to take us into the future of OH and what could be next and where it might be located.
Great. So we are looking at other markets where we're already doing work. You know, I think we've all heard Katie talk about how there's not only an affordable housing crisis in the United States, but there's an acute affordable housing crisis in any community that has experienced a disaster. Housing prices go up because there's so much demand and there's not a lot of inventory. And so in communities where people used to be able to afford to live, oftentimes after a disaster, they find themselves unable to afford their housing. And we've seen that in almost every community or market where we've worked. There are 2 places that we are really excited to expand the program into, and we're looking at opportunities. That is Puerto Rico and also Lake Charles. I mentioned earlier that we had submitted an application for low-income housing tax credits for a project in Lake Charles, and we'll hear about that in the next 30 days or so. We haven't submitted any specific applications for funding in Puerto Rico, but we will be exploring that more this year and look forward to reporting back. The only other thing I will say is that we are excited to share all of this with you guys because as you learn more about the program, we'd love for you to help us connect dots. So April brought up before, you know, can we think about OH with share partners? We definitely can, and we'd love to explore that more. But you might have some ideas too, or know of communities that really need this work that you could help us get connected to or think about how we might start working there. So this is sort of like the near term. And obviously in our strategic plan, we have some pretty big goals for what we want to do. We want to create 550 units of affordable rentals. Like that's a big, big number over the next 5 years. And we're going to get there by identifying more opportunities in New Orleans and Houston, where we're already working. looking into communities where we know there's a lot of demand, like Puerto Rico and Lake Charles, and then finding other ways and other communities that either need us to go and set up shop and create more units, or work with their government leaders or local leaders to figure out, like, how do they make this work? How can they bring more affordable units to their community? And we're totally happy to think about it that way as well. And so I think with that, we're going to hop to any more questions that folks might have before we get to our key takeaways slide.
There we go. We have a question from Valeria. Are there any mandatory inclusionary zoning laws in that area that make affordable housing easier to build? And what programs or tools are being used to find the right location to build low-income housing?
Yeah, it's such a great question. So there's certainly a lot of zoning laws that are discouraging affordable housing. And those could be as basic as saying, like, only single family homes are allowed to be built here, which then automatically prices a whole bunch of people out of certain neighborhoods. The opposite of that is some things that we've seen in New Orleans. And the city put together kind of a master plan related to housing development, and specifically affordable housing development, and really trying to encourage developers to think about moving into certain areas or locations that they had identified as having a lot of potential. And so what the city has done is that they have made, changed some zoning laws for sure, tried to make it easier for developers to do everything from like big picture to something as simple as like, where do you put the parking space? Do you need the parking space, right? The lot's so narrow, if I put the parking space in here, I can't build a unit that someone will actually want to live in, right? And so really trying to think about all of the different zoning laws that exist in a community that might be getting in the way for developers. And so it's been interesting to watch a lot of that landscape transform in New Orleans, making it more favorable than it had been in the past. In addition to that, as Ashley and Katie mentioned, we have a great relationship both with the New Orleans Redevelopment Authority, and they provide opportunities at least once a year, sometimes more, to do everything from acquire land at 10% of the market value, which is a crazy discount, right? 10% of the market value means that we'll buy lots for anywhere between $1,500 and $5,000. And what we have to commit to Nora doing is selling that property to someone at or below a certain income level, so that we are ensuring that we're creating more affordable units. So that's like one of the tools or programs that's being used in conjunction with the master plan to find locations for low income housing, specifically single family homes. And then the other thing that, and I'll give an example from St. Peter, Valeria, that I thought was really interesting. So St. Peter is located right next to a former public housing site in New Orleans that was demolished after Katrina. The big 5 public housing units were all demolished after Katrina and reimagined and rebuilt. Very controversial. It was very controversial. In the case of the public housing project that was close to SBP's current headquarters, they significantly reduced the number of units that were on site and said, okay, what we're going to do is reduce concentration and really work with developers to work within a half-mile or so radius of the former public housing project to create more units in the neighborhood as well. And so they became actually something called a choice neighborhood, which means that any properties that were built within a half-mile of there could qualify for additional subsidies for those units. So really incentivizing developers to build kind of right around the outside of the former public housing. So anyway, those are a couple of examples that we've seen in New Orleans that I think have been really thoughtful in an effort to bring housing opportunities to neighborhoods that are, more favorable, where people actually want to live.
Yeah, love it. Thank you, Liz. Andrew asks, are there any positions available for AmeriCorps members to become involved with opportunity housing?
So glad you asked that. They're not right now, but in the past we've had members work in opportunity housing. And as the program continues to grow, I am sure, and hopefully Mike's on the line here, that we are going to be requesting that, because I think it's such an interesting program and there's a lot of complexity to it. But at the end of the day, just like OOR, we're serving clients. You know, we are helping people find not only safe, stable housing, but resilient, energy efficient, and affordable housing. And I think it aligns really well with our mission. And it's just another way sort of see how SBP is thinking about how all these pieces fit together strategically to build stronger, more resilient communities pre and post disaster. So coming soon, I hope, Andrew.
Oh my God, I love it. Great, thank you. All right, well, if there are no more questions, then we will move on to the takeaways.
Okay, everyone. Like I said at the beginning of this presentation, our goal was to provide some insight to the OH program, which I think we accomplished, and your questions all were amazing. Thank you so much for the interaction that you guys had today during the presentation. It always makes it more fun for the presenter when you have these great questions coming at you. But we also wanted to make sure to provide you guys with key takeaways and key talking points when talking to people outside of the organization. I know that that's something that some of us newer hires have been talking about, really wanting to feel more equipped to do. So these are our 3 main takeaways. We hope you take away more, but these are our 3 golden takeaways that we would like you guys to have moving forward. And that is that opportunity housing is developing resilient, affordable housing as part of the disaster cycle. And that ties directly into SBP's strategic plan. That opportunity housing blends resilient building, energy efficient standards, and affordability in ways that aren't typically done. And the goal is to make that the new standard in affordable housing development. And that home ownership builds economic stability and generates wealth. Those are 3 huge takeaways that we want you guys to run away with and talk about. We are very proud of our program and very proud of our work with home ownership and also our work with affordable rentals. Like we talked about, sometimes that is something that's not touched on as much by nonprofits and, you know, action after a storm. And we are really, really proud of that. And we just want to thank you guys all for coming today. So those are our key takeaways from the program. On the next slide, you will see some really awesome resources for opportunity housing, just resources to learn more about and possibly like hand out or print or give away to people as takeaways. We have links to that presentation with President Clinton. We have a link to an awesome article from the conversation that Hope found maybe a month ago. That's just amazing. There's the video with Jasmine Scott, a NOLA handout that Gretchen, one of our AmeriCorps members, made for us. That's awesome. A brochure from 2021, and then some more articles about resilient building and the St. Peter and fair housing that I believe Hope might have put together. So thank you guys again very much. And if you have any other questions, please email them to us. And I'm definitely going to follow up with Liz about the question about tax credits to get maybe a 1-pager out to us so a lot of us can understand that better, because I think that was awesome. With that, thank you guys very much, and I hope you had a good lunch and learn.
Thank you so much.